Welcome to the Transform Your Wedding podcast, a how-to guide for taking your wedding to a whole new level. Here's your host, Marie Kubin from Rent My Wedding.
Hey everyone, today we're talking all about winter trends for reception decor. I'll be chatting with Emily Burgess, the owner of Hill Country Bride. It's a wedding planning firm based in Texas. Hey Emily, well thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so reception decor is one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a really big thing that when brides start planning a wedding, they just jump on Pinterest and start searching. It's very exciting. So
Definitely. And I know you've got some really great trends and tips about decor that we're going to get into, but let's start first with kind of that planning process. So, what do you recommend to couples when, they're just getting started? How should they brainstorm ideas for their reception decor?
well, one of my favorite tools that I use with my couples is to really try to hone in their style. And some of the things they can do to help figure that out and kind of be able to look at that from an outside perspective is go to their closet. So I always ask them, what's the color that appears most frequently in their closet? And then what's the color that appears most frequently in their home? That really helps kind of give them a direction because there can be trends that are fun to jump onto, but I definitely want my couples to feel like their wedding is unique to them and that they're still going to love it in 10 years and not regret like, oh my gosh, that was a trend that I jumped on, but I did not love that anymore. So that I think is a really fun starting point to help them engage in the design process.
Oh, cool. That is such a great idea. And I've literally never heard that before. To look in your closet and look in your home. That is such a good idea because I find myself even thinking, what's your favorite color? I don't know. I've never thought about that before. So I think, looking at what you've actually subconsciously picked out is such a great way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think what you mentioned there too, subconsciously is like, I could say my favorite color changes depending on like what I'm loving at Target these days.
Right.
And so, but what I buy and put on my body and regularly put on my body, usually kind of emanates what I'm naturally drawn to.
Definitely. So, what are some considerations to keep in mind once you actually get started and you're planning that reception decor?
I think I usually start with kind of budget priorities and priorities in general. So when a couple is starting the planning process with me, I don't really want to put like I don't want to have this template for them that says like this is the amount you have to spend on flowers and this is the amount you have to spend on linens. But really find out from them like, hey, what has stood out at weddings that you've been to before? And also sometimes couples don't notice those details. They just go and have a great time. But what kind of experiences have they had that they've loved or disliked? And then what kind of experience do they want to create for their guests? And I can really help once I know their priorities for that, I can really help them outline okay, so if feeling really comfortable is what we want or feeling really magical, then we're going to use these techniques to help convey that in a space.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. If you start with the experience, how you want people to feel, that should really drive the budget because, like you said, it's not one size fits all. So I think that's so smart to be thinking about, okay, if this is what you want to accomplish, then this is where we'll put most of the budget and prioritize things. And it could totally change depending on what it is that you're actually trying to do or what the vision is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, it's so easy for couples to really get sidelined and sidetracked because there is so much out there available on Pinterest and other resources for inspiration that it's really, it's really hard for them to say like, not just be able look at it and say, I want everything. I want all of those things, and we all have to kind of be realistic in that. So
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's smart to probably get your budget together before you even go down that whole rabbit hole too far of Pinterest and Instagram, because I know that's the other thing. When I was planning my wedding, I feel like I planned 3 separate weddings because I love so many things. Like you said, it's like, oh my gosh, I love this romantic style wedding. And then I want this really cool lighting. And then I want something really casual and beachy. And
Mhm.
like you can't put it all in one wedding. So
Exactly. Yes, that's very true. Yeah. Yep.
So when it comes to decor, There's certain elements that I know some wedding planners just absolutely love to use. And I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little and hear about what decor is your favorite for weddings. So let's jump into kind of your top 5 list. What's your number one favorite thing to use for reception decor?
Well, as I started with kind of thinking about this through the winter, because that's where I'm at right now. We're definitely planning about a year out. So I'm thinking winter, winter trends and winter decor. And for me, I'm a linens gal. I love things that when the guests come in, they're going to have physical contact with the linens. They're going to be touching and feeling those right now. And especially for fall and winter, velvet is really in, and we're kind of seeing a comeback of satin, which is really fun. And those are just things that it creates a really luxurious guest experience because again, that's something that they're actually touching. We're also seeing, things like velvet and satin in bridesmaids a lot right now. And those are just really fun, kind of, they're trends, but they're something that can last a longer time, a guest creating that guest experience is something that the guest is going to walk away with. So that would be my first one. Like I said, I'm a linens gal, so I love that. And then I would say my second one is magical lighting. So I work with you guys all the time with Rent My Wedding. I was just telling you earlier how, when I work with some of my venues, actually mention like, oh, this is a planner and she has this really cool resource that she works with this lighting company and helps bring them in. And really I use uplighting for all of my weddings. It's something that doesn't take a huge portion of the budget, which is awesome. So it can be incorporated really into all of my budgets that I work with and makes a huge impact on the space. I know a lot of couples walk into a space and they say, oh, but my wedding venue is beautiful. But they're touring it during the day. And the primary hours of their reception is actually happening during the evening. And so much of what, makes a venue really cool falls really, really flat whenever it's not lit well in the evening. And so I would say lighting is for sure a huge, it's not just a trend, it's kind of a staple for me. And when I work with clients. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love lighting. So that's like for me, the number one thing that I always love to see at receptions. And like you said, it's so versatile too. So it's something that I think you need to have because it just totally sets the mood, creates that ambiance, it makes the wedding photos pop. And you can either go crazy and follow trends with it and do a certain color that's trending, or you can make it really dramatic to be on trend, or you can just be really subtle and elegant and have maybe some white uplights or candlelight color uplighting. So I love too how it's just so versatile and it can fit any mood that you're trying to create.
Yeah. And another tip too with that is I almost always do at least a couple of pin spots on areas that I really want to highlight, like the cake area, things like that. Really, again, you can uplight a whole room. And even if you're not doing pin spots on all of the centerpieces, because that's not an option in your venue, highlighting these areas makes a really big impact on the design where you can actually save money by not trying to put things everywhere, but highlighting really impactful parts of the reception. So, and drawing guests' attention to those areas.
Yeah, that's such a good point too, because a lot of times people don't even know what pin spotting is. But like you said, in the venue, you might be touring during the daytime, but at night you don't have that sunlight coming in. The lights are dimmed, so you don't want to pay all this money for a gorgeous wedding cake and then kind of just fades into the background because the room is kind of dark. So if you have that pin spot, it just adds that wow factor, and suddenly your cake is a focal point, and it also makes it turn out, I think, even more amazing on the wedding photos too, because it just really pops. So I love pin spotting.
Yeah, it really does. I actually, in some of my design presentations with clients, I have like a slide that's like photos in the venue without uplighting and pin spotting, and photos in the venue with uplighting and pin spotting. And just to show them there's a complete difference here, not just guess, like, don't just trust me on how it feels when you walk in, but it really does show up in the photos.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love that too.
My next one is, we're seeing in the trends right now, kind of an old world revival, which is really fun. I think that it's pretty classic. It's very much inspired by 16th century, 17th century European grace and its calligraphy and wax seals and gold tapers. It feels very English garden. And I see that trend a lot right now. And I love that. I hope that sticks around for a while, because I think that it does convey a really classic feel. Anytime you're kind of bringing up something from that much of a history, it's going to come back around again and feel really classic. So I really love that. I also am loving the muted colors and muddy tones right now. Moody palettes are very in. So this is my fourth kind of decor trend. It's lots of earth tones and kind of muddying the colors, like taking our burgundy and making it cinnamon, and taking an orange and making it terracotta. Seeing a lot more taupes instead of bright whites. And those feelings too are the feelings that surround those colors are very inviting and warm, which is also kind of that old world revival. And I think that it too, just in the time that we're in right now, post pandemic, people are really loving the feeling of inviting people to gather again. And that feels very comfortable. Those colors feel very homey. So I love that trend right now. And then the last one is, it can be kind of a tip and a trend, but coming into wedding season again, as we're regathering, plated menus, we're seeing a lot more plated menus versus buffet style or cocktail style. And while buffet and cocktail and stations were so fun for a while they were happening and big and safe, I think the plated menu is just it's a really nice way to transition. You're bringing people together, you're sitting them all at the table together. It's focused more on the gathering and the conversation. The food gets brought to them, and that's part of the experience. But guests are also getting to have more of an experience with the table setting, which as a designer, I love. I love to see those little personal touches like wax seals and place cards at each seat, and a menu that has a ribbon wrapped around it. And really that guest experience is in trend right now. And I would say kind of in general flows in line with my business model, which is that I really like to create gatherings for people where they have an experience. And walking into a room and it being really lit well, it gives people a feeling whether they're conscious of it or not, and really sets the mood. And the same with those little personal details, like whenever they go to their seat and they see a thank you card with a wax seal on it, it's something for them to touch and feel really special, like they were thought about in the planning of this event. So those are kind of my favorite trends that are in right now, and kind of tips to go along with them.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting to see how, things that kind of started because of the pandemic, I think are going to be trends that continue on even, as things get safer. So plated dinners, I think, is huge. Like you said, not only is it a safety thing, but it's also just really nice for the guest experience. You're not worrying about getting in line and getting your food and queuing up and all of that. So I actually really love how that makes it easier to talk to everyone around you, and you don't get distracted like that. And like you said, then the focus too can be on that beautiful tablescape, and that's such a huge part now for reception decor.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love that the whole kind of, theme is this kind of quality over quantity right now. And so doing these smaller events where people really have an experience, and don't feel like they're just kind of herded through the wedding night, whenever you have a huge wedding. And so it's really nice to be able to have these smaller gatherings that are intimate. And I do also hope some of this sticks around too, just because it's a really fun experience for the brides in the planning process, getting to think through those fun little details, without it over stressing their budget, because it's not that detail times 400, so it's really nice for brides to be able to engage in those details, in the planning process, and then get to see their guests react too. And that's the same with smaller weddings right now, is you get to have a little more contact and feedback from your guests on the actual wedding evening, because there's just less people to make contact with. So
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Doing the quality over quantity, and the wedding is going to look more gorgeous. You're going to have more time to actually interact with your guests and make it more personal. So that's another thing that I just love that's happening because of the pandemic, unfortunately, but I think it's a positive thing overall for weddings. So that's such a great tip. I love that one.
Oh, thanks.
So Emily, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your company.
Well, I am down in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is just kind of a little, it's a little town, but it's a destination town. People from all over the world come here to visit and to get married. It's kind of it's kind of like a little Napa. It's a wine country of its own. And I love being here. A lot of my business is kind of centered around this area, mostly because my clients that come are semi-destination clients. So they, it's not destination like you're going to Europe, but it's a lot of like the US states, and ones surrounding Texas come to this area. And so you get this destination feel without, all of the things that come with doing like a completely foreign wedding. And so most of my clients, are out of town. And so a lot of my business model works around meeting with people on Zoom and, being the person on the ground here who has the network, in Fredericksburg. But I also love that it kind of lines up with my personal vision that my clients come to me and say, hey, I want to bring all of my guests together for a whole weekend experience. They're less focused on, I want to do this tradition, and more focused on, I want to visit with people. I want them to feel comfortable. I want to remember having this amazing weekend together. And so that really just kind of lines up with where my passion is too. I love beautiful things, but my goal is always using those beautiful things at an event to create an experience, not just having them for the sake of having them, or because it's been done, or because it's something you saw somewhere that you liked, but everything I do is really saying, like, how does this contribute to the guest experience? And that really lines up with my clients as well. So it's really a fun area to be in, and still a good time for that, because Fredericksburg is a great place to bring people from all over the country. That's a little bit easier to get to. You don't necessarily have to take an airline to get here. And it's just a darling little place. So yeah.
Oh, wow, that sounds amazing. And how can everyone get in touch with you?
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook. I am Hill Country Bride, or you can go to my website. I do have a blog on my website as well that you can kind of read wedding stories and real weddings from this area that I've done, and that's hillcountrybride.com.
Awesome. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this great advice about reception decor.
Thank you for having me. And thank you guys for being such a good resource. I'm so grateful. And I also saw that you guys are adding photo booths. You guys have recently added photo booths. And I know that that's going to be something that I use for my clients as well. So thanks for being a resource.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning all about those trends for winter wedding receptions. And don't forget, you can catch all of our podcast episodes over at transformyourwedding.com. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Rent My Wedding, your one-stop shop for event rentals. Order online and rentals are delivered right to your door. Shipping is free both ways nationwide. Rent lighting, backdrops, photo booths, and more. With the most 5-star reviews in the industry, Rent My Wedding makes rentals easy and affordable. Book your rentals today at www.rentmywedding.com.